You always hear about infidelity, see it in movies, or read about it online, but you never expect it to happen to you. I guess that's the first mistake, thinking you're safe. My wife, Amanda, and I had been together for 12 years, married for 9. We had 2 kids, a mortgage, and what I thought was a solid life together. Sure, things weren't as passionate as they were in the early days, but that's marriage, right? I worked full-time at an auto shop, she was a part-time yoga instructor, and we juggled everything from school pickups to soccer practice. It was busy, sometimes exhausting, but I thought we were good. Looking back, the signs were there. The late-night texts, the sudden obsession with going to the gym, the way she started dressing up more, even on days she wasn't teaching. But I was blind. I chalked it up to her wanting to feel better about herself, maybe getting healthier. It never crossed my mind that she was getting ready for someone else. The real wake-up call came when she started being too nice to me. She'd go out with her friends and come home unusually affectionate, almost guilty. And then there was the sex. At first, it got better, more passionate, almost desperate. But then it just stopped. She always had an excuse, tired, stressed, not in the mood. And I was too much of a fool to question it. But then, I found the proof. And that's when my whole world came crashing down. I don't know what made me check her phone that night. Call it intuition, paranoia, hell, maybe my subconscious already knew. Amanda had always been protective of her phone, but lately, she was obsessive about it. She'd take it to the bathroom, sleep with it under her pillow, and if I so much as glanced at it while it was on the table, she'd snatch it up like I was trying to steal government secrets. So, one night, while she was in the shower, I gave in. Her phone was locked, of course, but I knew the passcode, our anniversary, ironically. My hands were shaking so bad I almost mistyped it. When the screen unlocked, I hesitated. A part of me wanted to be wrong. But deep down, I already knew I wasn't. The first red flag? A text thread with a guy named Tyler. Now, we had a mutual friend named Tyler, but this wasn't him. This Tyler had heart emojis next to his name. My chest tightened as I scrolled. The messages weren't subtle. I miss you already. Last night was amazing. I can still feel you on me. I felt sick. My ears were ringing. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely focus on the screen. But I kept reading, like some twisted form of self-torture. She told him she loved him. She told him she was tired of pretending at home. She sent him pictures, ones I hadn't seen in years, or maybe ever. Then came the real gut punch. Ron suspects nothing. He's too busy stuffing his face and watching football to notice. I had to sit down. My own wife was laughing at me behind my back with another man. A guy I didn't even know. My hands clenched into fists. My whole marriage had just shattered in the span of 60 seconds. And she was still in the shower, completely unaware that her secret wasn't a secret anymore. I don't remember much of what happened right after she walked into the bedroom, wrapped in a towel, humming to herself like everything was normal. But I do remember the exact moment she realized something was wrong. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, her phone in my hand, my knuckles white from gripping it too hard. My head was spinning, my heart pounding so hard it felt like my ribcage would crack. When Amanda saw me holding her phone, her smile faltered. "Ron?" she asked, her voice uncertain. "What are you doing?" I looked up at her. My mouth was dry, but I forced the words out. "Who the fuck is Tyler?" Her whole body went stiff. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she did what guilty people do, she went into defense mode. "Why are you going through my phone?" she snapped, yanking the towel tighter around herself like she was the one being violated. "That's a complete invasion of privacy." I laughed. It wasn't a normal laugh, not even close. It was one of those hollow, humorless laughs that come out when you're past the point of anger, past the point of rational thought. Privacy? I repeated, shaking my head. You want to talk about privacy when you've been fucking another guy behind my back? She paled. I saw it, clear as day. She knew she was caught. But instead of breaking down or apologizing, she doubled down. You don't understand, she started, taking a step forward. It's not what you think. I shot up from the bed so fast that she actually flinched. Oh, really? It's not what I think. I spat. Because what I think is that you've been sneaking around with some asshole for God knows how long while I've been busting my ass to provide for this family. What I think is that you've been lying to me, laughing at me behind my back, sending pictures of yourself to another fucking man. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. What I think is that I've been sleeping next to a complete stranger. For the first time, Amanda's bravado cracked. I saw something flicker in her eyes, guilt, fear, maybe even regret. But it was too late for that. Ron, she whispered, reaching for me. I jerked away from her touch. Don't fucking touch me. She exhaled sharply and ran a hand through her damp hair. It's complicated, she muttered. I let out another bitter laugh. Oh, I bet it is. So go ahead, Amanda. Explain it to me. Make it make sense. She hesitated. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much to admit, how much to spin. Finally, she sighed and sat on the bed, rubbing her temples. I never meant for it to happen, she said. I swear. Tyler, he's just. I don't know, he was there for me in a way you haven't been. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. What the fuck does that mean? She looked up, her eyes already glassy with tears. Ron, you've changed. You don't even see me anymore. You come home, eat, sit on the couch, go to bed. You never make me feel wanted. I stared at her in disbelief. So your solution was to go find someone else to make you feel wanted? She wiped at her face, shaking her head. I didn't plan this. It just happened. I swore under my breath and turned away, pacing the room. I felt like I was going to explode. My mind was racing in 1,000 different directions, but one thing was crystal clear, this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an oops, I tripped and landed on another guy's dick situation. This was a conscious, ongoing betrayal. How long? I finally asked, my voice deadly calm. Amanda hesitated, biting her lip. I turned to her, my patience gone. How? Fucking. Long. She swallowed hard. A year. A year. The room spun. I had to sit down. A whole year of lies. A whole year of her sneaking around, making excuses, coming home to me while another man touched her. And all the while, I'd been oblivious. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the floor, my hands clasped so tightly together that my knuckles turned white. When I finally looked up, she was watching me with a mixture of guilt and something else. Defiance. Like she was still trying to justify what she had done. That was when I knew. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't something she regretted. She had chosen this, over and over again, for an entire year. And now, I had to choose me. Silence hung between us like a thick fog. My mind was a war zone, rage, betrayal, heartbreak, and a deep, suffocating numbness all crashing into each other. A year. She had been lying to me for a whole damn year. Amanda sat there, sniffling, rubbing her hands over her thighs like she didn't know what to do with herself. But I wasn't about to let her turn this into a pity party for her. I took a slow breath, my voice eerily calm. So, what now? She blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? I let out a bitter chuckle. What do you think I mean? You've been screwing another guy for a year. Now that I know, what's your plan? Amanda fidgeted. Ron, I told you, it's not that simple. It is exactly that simple, I shot back. You either want this marriage, or you don't. So, tell me, are you in love with him? She hesitated. That pause was the final nail in the coffin. I felt something inside me break. Some last, pathetic thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't what it seemed. But it was. It was. I shook my head, disgusted. Jesus Christ. You can't even answer me. Amanda wiped at her eyes. I love you, Ron. I do. But. I care about Tyler too. Too. That tiny little word sent my blood boiling all over again. I stood up so fast the chair nearly toppled over. Then go, I snapped. Go be with Tyler. Since he's so fucking important to you. She looked up at me, shocked. Ron, wait. No, my voice was steel. You don't get to stand there and tell me you love me while you've been fucking someone else for a year. You chose him. Over and over again. Every time you lied to me, every time you snuck off, every time you sent him those messages, you chose him. She was full on crying now, but I didn't care. I couldn't care. I pointed to the door. Get out. Amanda's eyes widened. What? You heard me. My voice was deadly calm. Get out. She shook her head furiously. Ron, we need to talk about this. I let out a humorless laugh. Talk. Now you want to talk. No, Amanda. You made your choices. Now live with them. She stood there, looking at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe she had spent so long convincing herself I was just some dumb, clueless husband that she didn't expect me to fight back. I took a step closer, my voice cold. Pack a bag. Go stay with Tyler. Ron, please. I cut her off. You don't live here anymore. That was when she finally realized I wasn't bluffing. Her face crumpled. Where will I go? She whispered. I let out a sharp exhale, shaking my head. That's not my fucking problem anymore. She tried to reach for me again, and for a split second, I saw panic in her eyes. Like she had never expected me to actually kick her out. Maybe she thought I'd be weak. Maybe she thought I'd beg her to stay, that I'd be so afraid of losing her that I'd forgive her. She was wrong. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else, but I turned my back on her. I heard her shuffle around the room, packing a bag between shaky sobs. I didn't watch her leave. I couldn't. When the door finally clicked shut behind her, I collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. I had just ended my marriage. And for the first time since discovering the truth, I felt something close to relief. The moment Amanda walked out, the house felt different. Not quieter, not emptier, just different. Like something rotten had finally been removed, but the stench still lingered. I sat there for a long time, staring at the walls, at the unmade bed where we used to sleep together, where she had probably laid awake after being with him. My stomach twisted at the thought. Then the emotions hit me all at once. The rage. The betrayal. The sheer fucking audacity of it all. I grabbed the nearest thing, a picture frame of our wedding day, and hurled it at the wall. The glass shattered, pieces scattering across the floor like the last 9 years of my life meant nothing. And maybe they didn't. Not to her. I barely made it to the bathroom before I threw up. The next few days were a blur. I called in sick to work. Couldn't eat. Barely slept. Just sat on the couch, staring at nothing, replaying every little stupid moment in my head. The late-night, girls' nights, the sudden interest in the gym, the way she used to roll her eyes at me when she thought I wasn't looking. How long had she been laughing at me behind my back? The worst part? She still had access to the house. I hadn't changed the locks yet, and she still had some of her stuff here. She texted me a few times. Can we talk? Ron, please answer. I don't want things to be like this. I left her on read. Then, one evening, she let herself in. I was in the kitchen, nursing a glass of whiskey I probably didn't need, when I heard the door open. I didn't even turn around. Amanda. My voice was flat. She hesitated. Hey. The fucking nerve of her to say it like that, like she was just coming home after a normal day. I turned, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. What do you want? She shifted uncomfortably. She looked like shit, her hair in a messy ponytail, eyes red like she'd been crying for days. Good. She exhaled shakily. I just wanted to see you. To talk. I know you're hurting, and I laughed, cold and sharp. You know I'm hurting. I shook my head. Wow, Amanda. That's rich. She flinched but pressed on. Ron, I never wanted to hurt you. I slammed my glass on the counter. But you fucking did. She closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know. I don't want us to hate each other. I stared at her. The sheer delusion. Do you even realize what you've done? I asked, my voice eerily calm. Do you get what you took from me? Tears welled in her eyes. I know I broke your trust. I let out a hollow laugh. Trust? Amanda, you didn't just break trust. You broke our entire life. You threw away everything we built, our family, our marriage, for what? Some guy who made you feel special. She wiped at her face. It wasn't just about that. Spare me, I cut in. I don't give a fuck about your excuses. You chose this. And now you have to live with it. She sniffled. I miss you. I clenched my jaw. That's not my problem anymore. She broke then, really started crying. And maybe a small, pathetic part of me should have felt bad. But I didn't. I walked past her, straight to the front door, and opened it. Get out. She hesitated. Ron. Get out, I repeated. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at me like she was finally realizing what she had done. But it was too late for that. She walked out. This time, I locked the door behind her. Then I poured another drink. And started planning my next move. The next morning, I woke up to a house that felt different. It wasn't just the emptiness, it was the finality of it all. The locks were changed, Amanda's things were in bags by the door, and I had finally started to accept that my marriage was dead. But now, it was time to move forward. I had spent days drowning in whiskey and self-pity, replaying every betrayal in my head like some masochistic loser. But that wasn't me. That wasn't who I wanted to be. So, I did the first thing I should have done the moment she walked out, I called a lawyer. You need to protect yourself. That was the first thing Chris Whitmore, divorce attorney and my new best friend, told me after I laid everything out for him. Financially, emotionally, legally, you cannot let her dictate how this plays out, he continued, flipping through his notes. She cheated. She walked out. She has no right to come back now and decide what she wants from you. I ran a hand down my face. I don't even care about the money, man. I just want my kids. Chris nodded. And you can get them. But we have to move fast. That hit me like a gut punch. The kids. I had been so consumed by the betrayal, by her, that I hadn't even started processing what this meant for them. And the truth was, I didn't trust Amanda to put them first. Not when she had spent a year sneaking around, choosing him over her own family. You said she left voluntarily, correct? Chris asked, adjusting his glasses. I nodded. Yeah. She's been staying with him. Good. He leaned forward. That means you already have primary custody by default. If she left the marital home and the kids stayed with you, that's in your favor. I let out a slow breath. So what do I do? Chris didn't hesitate. You file first. You control the narrative. We go for full custody, argue that her affair and instability make her unfit for joint custody, and she's gonna lose her shit, I muttered, rubbing the back of my neck. Chris shrugged. That's not your problem. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the divorce papers. It felt surreal. One signature, and I'd be officially ending nearly a decade of my life. But the truth was, Amanda had ended it the moment she let another man into our marriage. So, I signed. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt free. Filing for divorce felt like cutting off a rotting limb. Painful, necessary, but ultimately the only way to survive. But I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for my kids. And Amanda? She wasn't about to make it easy. The moment she got served, my phone blew up. Ron, what the fuck? You filed for full custody? Are you insane? We need to talk about this. Call me now. I ignored every single message. Then came the calls. First from Amanda, then from her mother, then from some unknown number that I was sure was her little boyfriend, Tyler. I let them all go to voicemail. Then she showed up at the house. It was late, around 9 p.m., when I heard pounding at the door. Not knocking. Pounding. I knew who it was before I even looked. I opened the door just enough to step outside and shut it behind me. What do you want, Amanda? She looked furious, her arms crossed over her chest. Are you seriously trying to take my kids away from me? I didn't flinch. They're our kids. And I don't trust you to put them first. She scoffed, tossing her hands up. Oh, give me a fucking break. I cheated, Ron. That doesn't make me a bad mother. I felt my jaw tighten. No, but walking out on them to shack up with some random guy sure as hell doesn't make you a good one. She looked away, biting her lip. I didn't abandon them, she muttered. I just needed time. I laughed. Yeah. Time for what? To see if the grass was greener on the other side? She flinched, but I wasn't done. You chose him over us, Amanda. You chose him over your kids. And now that you realize you might lose them, now you want to play the good mother. She looked like she wanted to scream, but she didn't. Instead, she took a deep breath, composing herself. You're being vindictive, she accused. You're trying to punish me for what I did to you. I shook my head. This isn't about me. This is about them. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure they're in the best environment possible. If that means keeping them away from a selfish, lying mother who prioritizes her boyfriend over her family, then yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. Not anymore. You're making a mistake, she whispered. I stepped back toward the door. No, Amanda. You did. Then I went inside and locked her out. The next day, Chris called with good news. The judge granted an emergency custody order, he said. For now, you have primary custody, and she gets supervised visitation. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. Supervised. She walked out of the marital home, moved in with her affair partner, and hasn't made any real effort to see the kids until now. That doesn't look great for her. I couldn't help it, I smirked. Amanda wanted a fight. She was about to get one. Amanda didn't take the emergency custody ruling well. The moment she realized she'd only get supervised visits with our kids, she flipped. More angry texts, more phone calls, more guilt-tripping bullshit about how I was turning the kids against her. But here's the thing, I didn't have to turn them against her. They already felt abandoned. Our oldest, Jake, was old enough to understand that Mom didn't live here anymore. He didn't cry, didn't throw tantrums. He just stopped asking about her as much. That silence said everything. Our youngest, Ellie, had more questions. Where's Mommy? When's Mommy coming back? Why can't we all live together like before? I did my best to answer without making it worse. Mommy and Daddy are living in different houses now. Mommy loves you very much, even if she's not here every day. I refused to badmouth Amanda in front of them. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because they deserved better than to be stuck in the middle of this war. And war was exactly what it became when we stepped into the courtroom. Amanda showed up looking like the victim. Conservative dress, barely their makeup, sad little frown on her face like she had suffered in all of this. Her lawyer was some guy who looked like he had just passed the bar exam last week. My lawyer, Chris. He was ready to eat them alive. The judge started with formalities, asking both sides to explain why they were seeking custody. I kept my statement simple. Amanda left voluntarily. I had been the sole caretaker of our kids for weeks. Her decision to prioritize an affair over her family proved she wasn't acting in their best interests. Chris made it clear that we weren't asking for supervised visits to be permanent. We just wanted stability for the kids until Amanda could prove she was responsible enough to be a real parent again. Then it was Amanda's turn. She sniffled, dabbing at her eyes like she had rehearsed this whole performance in the mirror before walking in. Your Honor, I made a mistake. A horrible mistake. But my children need me. I love them more than anything, and it's cruel to keep a mother from her babies. Chris leaned in, whispering, "Watch this." He stood, adjusting his suit jacket. Ms. Clark, he began, his voice smooth and controlled, you claim your children need you. Can you explain why you went weeks without seeing them? Amanda's eyes flickered. I was giving Ron space. I didn't want to confuse the kids by coming in and out of their lives. Chris didn't even blink. Is that why you moved in with your affair partner instead of fighting to see your children sooner? Boom. Amanda flinched, looking at her lawyer for help. The guy was useless. She stammered, that's not, Tyler was just helping me get back on my feet. Chris tilted his head. So instead of focusing on your children, you prioritized maintaining a romantic relationship with the man you cheated on your husband with? Amanda's face turned red. That's not fair. Chris didn't let up. I think what's unfair is that your husband has been solely responsible for these children while you were playing house with another man. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, we are not saying Ms. Clark can't be a mother. But until she shows real effort in rebuilding trust with her children, we believe supervised visits are in their best interests. Amanda's lawyer finally found his voice. Objection. That's overruled. Amanda's mouth clamped shut. The judge looked at both of us, then sighed. For now, I'm keeping the emergency order in place. Ms. Clark, you will have supervised visitation until further review. I could see the rage in her eyes, the way her hands clenched into fists in her lap. She lost. For now. But I knew Amanda. And she wasn't done fighting. Losing in court didn't humble Amanda, it infuriated her. For the first few days after the ruling, she tried to play the reasonable card. She sent long, emotional texts about how she just wanted to co-parent peacefully and didn't want things to be ugly between us. I ignored every single one. Then, when she realized I wasn't playing along, she snapped. You're turning them against me. You're poisoning my kids. You're not even a good father, Ron. They'll see that soon enough. Projection. Classic. I didn't respond. She wanted a reaction, and I wasn't giving her one. But I did screenshot everything and sent it straight to Chris. His response: "She's unraveling. Keep ignoring her." And he was right, she was unraveling fast. During her first supervised visit with the kids, I expected her to be on her best behavior. I figured she'd try to act like supermom to impress the court-appointed supervisor. Nope. She showed up late, looking like she hadn't slept in days, and was visibly on edge. When the kids ran up to hug her, she smiled, but it was off. Forced. For the first 15 minutes, everything was fine. But then Jake, our oldest, asked something that made her snap. "Mom, why don't you live with us anymore?" I wasn't there, but the supervisor later told me what happened. Amanda froze, then forced a smile. "Mommy just needed some time away." Jake, being the smart kid he is, pressed. "But Dad said you love us. If you love us, why did you leave?" Apparently, she clenched her jaw so tight her whole face turned red. Then, instead of answering him, she looked at the supervisor and demanded to know if she could have some private time with her kids. Obviously, the supervisor said no. Amanda lost it. She started ranting about how unfair this was, how I was manipulating the system, how she was the victim here. The visit ended early. I got the report later that night. The supervisor wrote that Amanda displayed unstable behavior and inappropriate emotional responses. That was all I needed. Chris was thrilled. "This is perfect," he said, tapping the report. "It proves she can't handle her emotions around the kids." I didn't feel thrilled. I felt done. Done dealing with her mood swings. Done worrying about what shit she'd pull next. Done giving a single ounce of energy to Amanda and her messy, pathetic choices. "I want this over," I muttered. "What's next?" Chris grinned. "We push for sole custody. Permanently." I nodded. It was time to end this once and for all. The moment I told Chris I wanted sole custody, he didn't waste time. We filed immediately. Amanda didn't take it well. She showed up at my house 2 days later, banging on the door like a lunatic. It was late, close to midnight, and the kids were asleep. I wasn't about to let her wake them up. I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me. "Are you out of your fucking mind?" She looked wild. Her hair was a mess, her eyes bloodshot. She was shaking, whether from anger or something else, I didn't know. "You're trying to take them from me," she spat. I folded my arms. "I'm trying to protect them." She let out a humorless laugh. "From me? I'm their mother, Ron. You can't erase me from their lives." I kept my voice steady. "No one's erasing you, Amanda. But you're not stable. You proved that during your visit. You scared them." Her face twisted. "I did not. Jake was afraid to ask you a simple question," I cut in. "Ellie came home crying because you wouldn't answer her when she asked if you'd be there for Christmas." Amanda's mouth opened, then closed. For a split second, I saw something crack in her. Maybe guilt. Maybe regret. But then she snapped back into defense mode. "You turned them against me," she hissed. I clenched my jaw. "They're not against you, Amanda. They're just hurt. And instead of owning what you did, you keep making this about you." She shook her head, her hands balled into fists. "You're fucking cruel." "No," I said quietly. "I'm done being a doormat." She wiped at her face. "You don't get it, Ron. You don't understand what I've been through." That was it. That was my breaking point. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "You don't get it. I didn't fucking leave. I didn't cheat. I didn't walk away from my kids because I was confused or needed time. That was you. This whole situation. You did this. Her eyes were wild with fury. You hate me. I exhaled sharply. I pity you. That shut her up. She stepped back, blinking rapidly, like she couldn't believe what I had just said. I turned and walked to the door, pausing only once. Don't come here again unannounced. Next time, I call the cops. Then I went inside. I locked the door. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like the one who lost. After that night, Amanda went silent. No texts, no calls, no desperate midnight visits. For a moment, I almost thought she'd finally accepted reality. That she'd realized she couldn't manipulate her way out of this one. I should have known better. Because when Amanda finally made her move, she went nuclear. It started with a phone call, from Child Protective Services. Mr. Lawson, we received an anonymous report of child neglect in your home. We'll need to conduct an in-home visit. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I took a deep breath and asked the question I already knew the answer to. This anonymous report, was it from my ex-wife? The woman on the phone hesitated. I can't disclose that information. Yeah. That was all I needed to hear. I called Chris immediately. She's desperate, he said, completely unfazed. This is a common move in custody battles. She wants to make you look unfit, hoping to either scare you into dropping your petition or at least force the judge to reconsider joint custody. She's out of her damn mind, I muttered. What the hell did she even report? Chris sighed. Probably the usual, unsafe environment, emotional neglect, maybe even abuse if she's feeling bold. I clenched my jaw. How do we fight this? He sounded amused. We don't have to fight anything, Ron. CPS will investigate, find nothing, and she'll look like an even bigger idiot for wasting their time. And he was right. 2 days later, a CPS worker showed up at my house. I let her in, gave her a full tour, answered all her questions. The house was clean. The fridge was stocked. The kids were happy. Jake even made a comment about how Dad makes the best spaghetti, which got a laugh out of the investigator. At the end of it, she closed her notebook and smiled. Mr. Lawson, I see no concerns here. I'll file my report, but I expect this case will be closed quickly. I exhaled. Thank you. She nodded, then hesitated. Off the record, if the mother made this report in bad faith, the judge won't look kindly on it. I grinned. Good. Chris was ecstatic when I told him. This is exactly what we needed, he said. She just proved to the court that she's willing to lie and weaponize the system to get what she wants. I shook my head, still processing. It's insane. She'd rather risk losing everything than admit she fucked up. Chris chuckled. Some people can't handle consequences, Ron. They'll fight reality until it buries them. And Amanda? She was about to get buried. After the CPS stunt failed spectacularly, I thought Amanda would finally back down. She didn't. Instead, she doubled down in the worst way possible, by trying to guilt the kids. It happened during one of her supervised visits. The supervisor later told me that at first, everything seemed normal. Amanda was overly cheerful, trying too hard to make everything feel fun instead of addressing the giant elephant in the room. Then, out of nowhere, she started crying. Not a few tears. Sobbing. Ellie, being little and sweet, got worried. Mommy, what's wrong? Amanda pulled her into a hug, rocking back and forth like she was the victim in all of this. I just miss you so much, baby. It's not fair. Daddy won't let me be with you. He's trying to take you away from me. That was when Jake, my smart kid, stepped in. That's not true, he said, pulling Ellie back. Dad said we can see you when the court says it's okay. Amanda shook her head, wiping at her face. That's what he wants you to think, honey. But he doesn't want us to be a family again. Jake stared at her. Do you? Amanda froze. What? He crossed his arms. Do you want to be a family again? With Dad? Silence. Amanda opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked away, face twisting like she was about to lie but couldn't quite get the words out. And that was all Jake needed. The supervisor later told me he grabbed Ellie's hand and said, "Come on, let's go play," and walked away from her. That moment. That was the beginning of the end for Amanda. When I picked up the kids, the supervisor pulled me aside. "She crossed the line today," she said, handing me the report. "The judge needs to see this." I skimmed it, my stomach turning. Manipulating the kids. Emotional coercion. Blaming me in front of them. I clenched my jaw. What happens now? The supervisor exhaled. If this keeps up, she could lose visitation altogether. That hit me harder than I expected. Because as much as I despised Amanda, as much as I wanted to take everything from her the way she took everything from me, I knew the kids still loved her. But she was making it impossible to give her any more chances. When I got home, I sent the report to Chris. His response? "We've got her. This is the final nail in the coffin." Chris wasn't exaggerating. That supervised visit report. It was a game changer. The court had already been skeptical of Amanda after her CPS stunt. But now, she had given them exact proof that she was trying to manipulate the kids against me. And in custody cases, that's a death sentence. 2 weeks later, we were back in court. Amanda sat across from me, looking wrecked. Dark circles under her eyes, hair messy like she hadn't bothered fixing it. It was a stark contrast to the polished, put-together version of her from the last hearing. She knew she was losing. And when the judge started reading the findings, her face confirmed it. The court finds that Ms. Clark has engaged in coercive and emotionally manipulative behavior during supervised visitation, as evidenced by the official report from the visitation supervisor. Amanda's lawyer tried to object, claiming it was being taken out of context. The judge shut him down immediately. This is not an isolated incident. Ms. Clark has demonstrated a pattern of behavior that is detrimental to the children's well-being. Amanda sank in her chair. Then came the final blow. Due to the repeated concerns regarding Ms. Clark's judgment and stability, this court grants Mr. Lawson sole legal and physical custody of the children. Ms. Clark's visitation will be revoked indefinitely until she undergoes court-ordered therapy and can demonstrate a substantial change in behavior. I swear I heard Amanda stop breathing. Her lawyer leaned over, whispering furiously, but she was frozen. Staring at the judge like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Then, reality hit. Her face twisted with rage. "This isn't fair," she snapped. The judge raised a brow. "Ms. Clark, I suggest you control yourself." Amanda let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "This is exactly what Ron wanted. He planned this." She turned to me, eyes burning with hate. "You wanted to erase me. You wanted me to lose my kids." I stayed silent. Because at that moment, nothing I could say would make a difference. She had done this to herself. And the judge knew it. "Ms. Clark, I strongly recommend you listen to your counsel. This ruling is final." The gavel came down. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Chris clapped me on the back. "Well, my friend, you just won the war." I exhaled. It doesn't feel like winning. And in a way, it didn't. Because as much as Amanda had earned this outcome, as much as she had burned every bridge possible, there was still a part of me that hated what this would do to the kids. They deserved a mother. But they didn't deserve her. Chris sighed. "Look, man. You did everything right. She had every chance to be a decent parent. She chose this path. All you did was protect your kids. I nodded slowly. He was right. But Amanda? She wasn't done lashing out. Winning the custody battle should have felt like the ultimate victory. But the truth? It just felt like the end of a long war. And Amanda? She did not go quietly. For weeks after the ruling, she spiraled. She blew up my phone with messages, ranging from desperate pleading to pure venom. Speech balloon Ron, please, let's talk. I can't lose my babies forever. Speech balloon you turned them against me, you piece of shit. Speech balloon I hope you rot alone, you miserable asshole. I blocked her. That's when she turned to social media. Facebook posts full of bullshit about how I stole the kids, how I was abusive, how she was the real victim in all of this. Her friends. Some of them bought it. Most didn't. Because the truth was out there. Court records don't lie. The kids adjusted faster than I expected. Jake barely mentioned his mom anymore. Maybe he had already made peace with who she really was. Ellie still asked about her sometimes. I never badmouthed Amanda, I just told her, Mommy needs to work on herself before she can see you again. And that was the truth. Would Amanda ever change? I didn't know. But I wasn't about to put my kids through another round of her selfish bullshit just to find out. A few months later, I heard through a mutual friend that Amanda and Tyler had broken up. Apparently, he had started seeing another woman behind her back. I won't lie, when I heard that, I laughed. The man she destroyed our family for. He had treated her like she was disposable. Karma, right? 3 years later. My life looked nothing like it did back then. The business I started. Thriving. My kids. Happy. And me? I met someone. She was a teacher at Ellie's school. Smart, kind, patient. The kids adored her. And for the first time in years, I had something I never thought I'd have again. Peace. As for Amanda, she never really recovered. She bounced between jobs, tried, and failed, to get visitation back, and last I heard, she was still bitter about how things turned out. But you know what? I stopped caring. Because in the end, I got everything that mattered. And Amanda? She got exactly what she deserved.